Hey friends, so it's time for another dramatic review. So even though we are going to review every chapter, and I do want to say for the YouTube reviewers, I am not reading each chapter verbatim. I'm actually skipping quite a bit. I'm just highlighting the most interesting parts and commentating on them. So what I decided to do was to skip to chapters 8 and 10, where she introduces Dan and then Ken, because I know we're all curious. So let's take a look, y'all. Okay, chapter 8, Gree, a curse. It's so cliche, but by the time I was real age 19, I couldn't turn off the need for a man, any man in my life. I'd started a secret MySpace page and then a secret Facebook account. Oh boy, the Gypsy Rose social media grooming starts. Mama and I had seen an advertisement on TV for VisionCon, a pop culture convention held every year in Missouri. We went 3 years in a row, beginning in 2009. I waited for every spring to come just to dress up and do something fun with Mama. So I began adding people from the convention to my online friends list. I received a Facebook message from Dan around March 2011. In his friend request, he reminded me that he was the drunk guy who bumped into my wheelchair at VisionCon. I already exhibited daddy issues as I grew to have a mad crush on him. Let's see. Mama obviously didn't know that I was spending months talking to Dan, exploring who I could be if allowed to be in my own person. What color would my hair be if it was allowed to grow in? What kinds of restaurants would I like to eat at if I were allowed to eat? Well, we've seen Ken take her to Nobu and what she get, like a Caesar salad and chicken nuggets or something. Okay, now here's something we've heard before. Dan was the first person I ever told I could walk. I unburdened myself to him. Well, at another point in the Dr. Phil interview, she said that Nick was the first person she ever told she could walk. So we are reviewing this for entertainment purposes. No, please nobody mistake me for buying this book to review because I believe Gypsy Rose. Yeah, that's not the case. That's not the case. This is entertainment. I was always high when talking to Dan, dreaming about moving away with him, being quirky and silly and always telling jokes. One day, while Mama and I were being put up at the American Cancer Society Hope Lodge Mercy Hospital, Dan and I communicated through phone calls on a government burner phone, one of the 3 Mama had. I hadn't done any rebelling yet, so Mama didn't have any reason not to trust me with one of the phones. Plus, she didn't think I had anyone to call or text anyway. I called to tell him that I found my Medicaid card in my mother's wallet. I suspected that I was older than what my mom told me. The birth date on the card was 4 years earlier than I had known my birthday to be, July 27th, 1991. I was horrified but also relieved to think that I could actually be 19 years old, not 15. I knew that my being of legal age could change a lot of things for me and Dan, so I put aside the thought that I was being held captive by an evil stepmother, and I focused on a fairy godmother, granting my wish to be with my prince. Dan told me, if this is true, you don't have to stay with her. You can start a new life. Well, that's a lot to unpack there, y'all, because I've told y'all over and over that I firmly believe that from the time Gypsy arrived in Aurora, Missouri, she believed she was a Disney princess. And she over and over relates her life to fairy tale parallels. And she just said there that she put aside the thought that she was being held captive by an evil stepmother and focused on my fairy tale godmother. Well, Dee Dee was her real mother, not a stepmother. Christy Blanchard is the stepmother. So this is just a really weird thing to write, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not educated in psychology, but I feel like there's some Freudian stuff going on here. What do y'all think? Oh my God, tell me in the comments. Okay, and then Gypsy describes a scene that, although I disagree with a lot of people on YouTube, I do believe Dee Dee had some tendencies that were ABUSIVE, but I've never quite believed that she was physically that way, that she actually physically hurt Gypsy. Like, for instance, I believe the Oragel story. Oragel doesn't cause pain, it numbs the gums, and it perpetuated Dee Dee's con by having Gypsy drool and talk funny, like yeah, and without actually causing harm to Gypsy physically. But this next story that Gypsy's about to tell, I'm sorry, I just don't believe. Maybe some evidence will come out someday and it'll turn out I was wrong, and in that case I will apologize. I'll make a video about it. But here's what she's got to say, y'all. She says, just as his words stirred my heart. And keep in mind, that's Dan saying Gypsy knew she could leave. Dan was telling her before Nick begged her to run away. You can leave. Okay, anyway, moving on. Just as his words stirred my heart, Mama opened the door to the bathroom. Immediately, I hit the floor. I'm sorry, Mama. Covering my head with my hand, she grabbed my phone, heard a man's voice, and hung up. Even behind closed doors, I was not ever to get out of my wheelchair, stand, or walk. I was in double jeopardy now. First for walking, and second for talking to a man. Y'all, we saw the state of that house. I don't think any of us believe that she was actually being in the wheelchair full time behind closed doors. Dee Dee had those windows blacked out for a reason. So in Aurora, I know she tried to keep Dee Dee tried to keep Gypsy from moving her legs too much too often and stuff like that. But once they got to Springfield, like, Gypsy was a little older. She was 2 years older by that time. It was harder. She just blacked out the damn windows. We know Gypsy was walking around there. The way that house was absolutely cluttered and hoarded, there's just no way that she was actually rolling around a wheelchair in there. Hey y'all, I'm jumping in here with editing to say that also there was that doctor who said that her muscles did not show the muscle tone of someone who actually spent full time in a wheelchair. She was walking. What do y'all think? She just stood there without saying a word, letting me beg for mercy. Get in your chair and now get to the van, and then grabbed the phone off the floor. Her calmness unsettled me. In the van, my stomach curled as I watched her shift around the Kansas City streets. How'd they get to Kansas City? Anyway, I must have missed something. She looked right through me. You goddamn whore. We rounded a corner, and she pulled the minivan into an alleyway and threw the car in a park. She looked at me, looked at my legs, and began punching them. She attacked every healthy, active muscle in my quads and thighs like she was a boxer and I was a piece of meat hanging in a freezer locker. I don't know how you could bleed without cutting the skin. I didn't know you could bleed without cutting the skin. Redness began to rise to the surface, create little blood clots, which later formed blisters. She had never closed fist punched me before. I sobbed so hard. I couldn't catch my breath. I'm sorry, Mama. Please stop. She looked checked out, and I knew she couldn't hear me above her own disgusted yelling. What did you tell him? Where did you meet him? Who is he? I leave for a moment, and this is what you do. I didn't tell him anything, Mama. She grabbed my face with one hand, squeezed my cheeks together, forcing my lips into a pucker. The tips of her fingernails dug into my skin as she looked me square in the eyes. I hate you. My fear of being under her thumb went from a feeling to an urgent fact. She thought she had her ultimate control of me locked in, but I veered outside her radius, causing her to lose sight of me. She declared a dogfight where her new combat maneuver was to gain positional control over me. Punch after punch. The shiny bruises on my legs were marks of the true colors of her soul. Mama read my text messages and hastily dialed Dan's number. She didn't introduce herself when he answered. You know she's only 15, she barked. If you contact her again, I'll call the cops. Then Gypsy says that her and Dan kind of cooled off, but only for a couple of weeks, and then She started telling him more and more, and Dan says, "You are technically an adult. You can start a new life." Yes, Gypsy, you can. You could have. I look back on my first attempt to run away with Dan as the biological natural urge brought on by growing up, individualizing. Puberty was a taboo subject, but just the same, along with the metamorphosis of my body, my developing prefrontal cortex was taking me for a joyride. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Good Friday, April 22nd, Dan texted Mama's phone, which I had hidden in my dresser drawer on the side of the bed. "I'm in the hospital. I got beat up. I'd like you to be with me." How weird. So I grabbed the phone and my government phone, which had run out of minutes, government phone, and stuffed them inside a backpack full of girl-woman confusion. I had to go to him. I picked up my Lilo and Stitch movie, my baby bottle, a change of nipples, a pair of stolen jeans, and stolen lingerie. As I stole Mama's cash and Oxy's stash, I was scared as hell. I threw on a pair of oversized jeans since I didn't know my size. I had stolen them a few weeks before in preparation. Next screenshot. I put on a stolen black tank top over a red bra that was 2 sizes too big and a beach wave blonde wig. I scribbled a note in the darkness of the kitchen and left it on the seat of my wheelchair and slipped out the door. "Dear Mother, I know I can walk. I don't think I have cancer. I don't feel sick. I know that I am really 19. I want to live my own life as an independent woman. I love you. It is just time for me to spread my wings and fly. I am going up to St. Louis." That's the first time we've heard of that. Has anyone ever heard Gypsy Rose mention St. Louis before? Tell me in the comments. "I love you, your grown-up daughter." Walking up the street, I felt out of breath because I wasn't used to carrying the weight of my own body. I don't believe that. I believe she was walking around in that house all the time. I mean, in that video that she sent to Nick, she wasn't rolling in a wheelchair. Y'all, what do y'all think? I walked to the subdivision of houses across the street, knocked on a door. Okay, that's all I can say for now, y'all. I will be back with the next chapter and the finishing of Dan and next chapter on Nick. Stay tuned.